I remember when we started, I was the one taking the calls, right? And you two were doing the picking and packing. And we would take calls and orders all day.
Yeah.
Then 5 p.m., I'd go upstairs, grab whatever you'd packed, and then drive out to deliver them all.
That Christmas was the time that we were just doing all the packing.
And then we were just jumping over boxes, like running up, because in the second floor, we took out all of the kids' toys from the shelf, and then we put shampoos there. So every time there was an order downstairs, we would entertain people who would walk into our house, and then I'd run up to get the products from the shelf, and then run down again.
And I remember we had to do all the labels in 1 week,
This is
thanks to Manchu.
with the labels.
He helped us get them all designed in 1 week. How many labels? About 70 or 80
More,
or something?
more.
Stressed ako nung time na yun. Hindi, ayun, I only had 3 hours of sleep kasi for 2 weeks na yun. Usually it takes me about 2 to 3 weeks to design a product label from the start until the approval and the final design. But for this project, I had to design 94 unique SKU labels in 2 weeks.
My name is Nicoy, and I made the first version of the Human Nature logo and the first 2 catalogs. The time pressure to deliver because they had a launch date, they had a schedule that they needed to keep.
And I remember sitting almost all night with Decoy,
Yeah.
night after night after night, to try and finish the catalogue on time so it could be printed.
But we just wanted a small store that we'll be manning ourselves.
That didn't seem to be the path anymore when you bought SAP.
So basically, it started in Dylan's living room or in his kitchen, wherein 1 week prior to the launch, we were setting up the system. I asked him, you don't need to have SAP from the start. And he said, no, I just want to actually start already with the foundation. So that's actually a good vision from Dylan at that time.
So yeah, we were doing it all, just the 3 of us, and then we got our first employee, who was April.
Unang pasok ko, nasa bahay pa lang kami ni Ma'am Ana at ni Sir Dylan. Bali, doon kami nagpa-process ng mga order. Bali, 2 lang kami ni Ma'am Camille. Doon din pinipick, chine-check. Dumating nga sa time na ang dami ng error, na parang ang daming feedback ng customer na mali yung pinapadala, mali yung variant, kulang, excess, missing, mga ganun.
The landline that we had back then is the
Wireless
that you can send
Buy and
messages.
sell,
So people would send in their orders at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And I would sleep beside it.
I seriously contemplated, should I bring this to the bathroom or not?
That's why God sent us Moise.
There was no formal training at all. Like, nobody had time. Everybody was busy. Nobody had time to train. So after like a week or 2, parang I was already doing everything that everybody else was doing. But just when I thought that I was getting the hang of it, then came in the Christmas peak season, and it was 100 times worse than my first day or first few weeks.
It didn't take long after we started to realize that we really needed a lot of other people here. And then God just started sending them one by one.
We were just operating from a 2-room apartment. Our tables were beside each other. I had no trash can. I had no budget. I had nothing. There were no systems, no processes. I had no people, whether internal or external. I mean, outsourcing things, working with an agency. That wasn't even an option. We had nothing to pay them with. When I look back, all of those things that we did not have, it was overcome and overcompensated by the dream that we did have.
And one by one, we had to figure out, okay, this is something we didn't expect. Now what do we do? But he sent the people to help us do it. And that's the thing that has really been the most amazing to me, that over and over again, he's sent people at the right time. And like a jigsaw, he's just put piece by piece, bits of human nature together with the right people who knew how that little piece fitted, so that it would all come together into what it is today after 10 years.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our first ever webinar Wednesday here at Human Nature. My name is Teacher Tanya, and I am Human Nature's Child Care Center partner, and I will be your host for today. Before we begin, let me tell you more about our local brand. Human Nature is the Philippines' largest social enterprise that produces genuinely natural, affordable personal care, cosmetics, and home care products. Founded in 2008 by Dylan Wilk, Anna Meloto Wilk, and Camille Meloto Rodriguez, Human Nature products are proudly Philippine-made, contain no harmful chemicals, and are certified cruelty-free. Operated by Gandang Kalikasan Incorporated, Human Nature pays dignified living wages to all workers, sources all ingredients responsibly, produces products sustainably, is highly ethical, world-class, and proudly Filipino. Now, let's get on to our webinar. Ayan, I'm so excited for this. Even though we're not physically together, we are also excited to be here because today's talk will be a breath of fresh air, especially for work-from-home moms like me and stay-at-home moms alike. The question some of us are asking is, can our families both have safety and sanity in the new normal? Let's find out more about this. For now, let me introduce to you our kind, intelligent, and beautiful guests who will be joining us today. They are three amazing women who are also firm believers of goodness in and outside of the household. Our first guest is a board-certified psychologist, guidance counselor, content expert, speaker, program developer, lecturer, and award-winning author. She has more than a decade's experience teaching and counseling in a premier exclusive school for girls, and she's currently a part-time faculty at Miriam College. With her expertise in family psychology, child development and parenting, digital media management, self-care, and well-being, she effectively creates doable training programs and learning workshops geared toward these important fields for consumer brands, educational institutions, and corporate organizations. Let's please welcome this afternoon, Dr. Michelle Alignay.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Tanya. It's nice to join you for this webinar.
Yes, we're so excited to have you.
I'm so excited to talk with everybody also.
Our next guest is a homeschooling mom to 6 children between ages 17 and 1. She is passionate about marriage, parenting, and family values, and shares personal challenges and joys of these life wonders in her website, www.teachwithjoy.com. Above all else, her greatest passion is living in the glory of Jesus Christ, which she hopes will define everything she is and does as a woman. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome award-winning blogger, author, speaker, and loving mom and wife, Joy Tanchi Mendoza.
Hi, everybody. Happy to be here. Hi, Tanya. Hi to the other speakers, Michelle and Kat. Happy to be with you guys.
Thank you, Mommy Joy. And our third and final guest is a hardworking and loving mom to her curious and energetic 2-year-old son, Dan, who is currently in a stage where many working moms can definitely relate. And I've been a personal witness to this, of exploring and pushing personal boundaries. She's been working with Human Nature for the past 8 years and is currently head of branch operations. Please welcome our very own Kat Pataksil Sui.
Hi, thank you for having me, and I'm happy to learn also from the other speakers here.
Yes, thanks for joining us, ladies. And in today's webinar, we'll be talking about the following: how the quarantine has affected members of our household and our families in general, commonly experienced problems since the lockdown for seasoned moms and new moms alike, raising more emotionally stable children. I think this is very, very important, and building better relationships with them. I'll address this first question to Doc Michelle, but the rest can answer afterwards. What are some common problems or issues that families go through given that the pandemic has forced us to stay at home together all day, every day, or 24/7?
I like that, all day, every day, 24/7. Let me just share with you that what I've noticed with among many parents that I've been engaging with or speaking with for the past months, some of the problems that are magnified by this situation are actually existent to begin with. So there's discipline concerns, there's the communication patterns, either good or not too good, and of course, they don't have their personal space. And another issue that I've noticed with parents is that they're too much concerned about their kids' sanity, or what we call mental health and anxiety, which is just valid, but only that they don't realize that many of the things that their kids are absorbing are actually because of how they are coping in this situation also. So that becomes a challenging because we're with our kids 24/7. Yung mga problema mas na-magnify, and then the things that we've been dealing partially before, we are really asked now to confront. And of course, it's a challenge to the work-life balance. You know, we have to redefine the work-life balance now. We have to redefine family time. We have to redefine a lot of things in our family. So, you know, it's just there even before the pandemic. But right now, I believe that the concern is how we're coping and how we are recalibrating how we do it.
Agree. Thank you, Doc Michelle. Mommy Kat and Mommy Joy, have any of you encountered these problems? Or what common issues have you personally encountered sa mga anak nyo?
One of the challenges, Tanya, personally, I have enrolled my child in the daycare, and the big challenge that we have encountered is that, in fact, there's no away time from your child, and we have to be hands-on with him for the whole day, 24/7, in fact. And the challenge with that is that I have a 2-year-old son, and at this stage of his development, he's not the kind that you can just leave alone to explore the world by himself. And that cripples either of us, my husband and I, to look after him. So actually, one of the biggest challenges that we have is that either of us take turns in taking care of the child, missing valuable time to pursue work, pursue development tasks that we have for ourselves as well.
Mommy Joy?
Yeah, I think for me, what I notice is that, of course, because our kids are watching us all the time now, they're very sensitive, as Doc Michelle said, to even the way that we respond as parents. And I remember at the beginning of the quarantine that I was exhibiting fear and anxiety and modeling that for my children because of all the uncertainty. So some of the conversations that I was having, even in front of the children, or the way that I was responding, I think it was my daughter, Tiana, that especially picked up on it. And I had to be very mindful of the way that I was reacting and responding to this pandemic. And so what I saw was she started to have panic attacks, and she would say things like, "Mom, I think I'm having a hard time breathing," and "Mom, I think I'm too young to die." So she was very much affected. So I had to talk to her, process things with her, and also be very mindful of how I was processing what was going on, and making sure I also modeled for her a spiritual perspective, trust in the Lord, faith that He was in control, that He was going to get everybody through this. And I asked her to read her Bible because, and to start journaling. And she started going into the Psalms and writing about, what God was speaking to her. And that really, really helped her a lot. But I would say, like Dr. Michelle was saying, I think one of the challenges is definitely that our kids see us all the time and they see our lives up close. And although this was something that my children already saw because we were homeschooling, and we continue to homeschool, I think the pandemic forced us to really be in each other's space and faces just all the time. So on the one hand, I think it was an advantage because when it comes to modeling, you then can model the things that you really want your children to see. But on the downside, if there are issues in your personal life or in the way you deal with things or in the way that even I respond to Edric, my husband, then my kids are also picking up on those things. So, we've had to work through our examples, I suppose, as husband and wife, as parents to our children, to just be very mindful of what we are modeling to them.
Joy, being the seasoned mom, between you and Kat, and you have like a wide age range of your children. I was just curious, like how different they were coping from your 17-year-old to your younger kids. How are they different in their coping mechanisms and response to your disposition?
So for Tiana, my daughter, who was, exhibiting fear and anxiety, she was always kind of on the more fearful side. She would get worried if I went out, and if I was out for a while, she'd always call me, Mom, what time are you going to be home? Are you okay? So she was normally like that already. She was just a more concerned person. So into the quarantine, that's why I think that became magnified. Whereas my baby, Kaylee, who's a year and 9 months now, for her, I think it was very good because, babies do very well with predictability and routine. So she's actually adjusted very well, but she is also a people person. So there'll be times where I just need to drive her around in the car around the village just because she needs to get out of the house and she wants to see things. So that'd be my baby. And then my older kids, I would say the biggest adjustment for them was not being able to hang out with their friends and their cousins because they are very social children, and that was something they really did enjoy a lot. So, and we are not the type of family that will just let them be on gadgets to communicate with friends, to be online. So that's been a big adjustment for them. Although they've said recently that they've really enjoyed having very focused time as a family. So I guess there's just pros and cons to this entire situation. And for my oldest son, who's 17, we've allowed him and our second son to be able to connect with their friends online, monitored times. But I would say that's been a hard adjustment for them because they really do miss being with their friends and cousins, in person. So sometimes with their neighbors, as long as they haven't been exposed to anything, we can sometimes get together, but it's been very, very rare.
Thanks, Joy. And Doc Michelle,
Yes.
Is there a right way to adjust? And how?
Well, we cannot say what's right and wrong because, it's relative to each family. But I would like to encourage the moms, the first, and the parents, whoever's listening, it's really a call for higher self-awareness. The one that what Mom Joy said, that she's very receptive about the different personalities and tendencies of her kids. So we have to be attuned with their needs. But first, before we can tune into their needs, we have to be attuned to our needs also. That's why a parent, you have to choose between these two words. Either we are reactive or we are responsive. When we are reactive, it's more of the negative things. We always Mom, can you help me with this? What is it about? We are more high-strung. But when we say we are responsive, Mom, I have a concern. Okay, can you hold on for a second? I'll go back to you in a minute. So, we work on possible solutions together. So I hope that parents are considering about how they react or respond, because when we keep reacting to our kids, the underlying message that we are creating is that they are feeling that we are bothersome to the parents' work, right? And then my feelings don't matter. That's another tone, because I'm just a child. It's okay for me to just play, but it's not okay for me to express how I really feel about the situation. So parents, we have to be cautious. We have to be, let's use that word, mindful about our own well-being, because actually it matters greatly in how we are what do you call it, manifesting everything in the family. Because if we are well, if the parents are well, we can tune in slowly to how we are taking care of our kids' needs. But if we are not well and we feel that we have too much burden, we're carrying so much, and our well-being, it's at stake also. It's hard for us to really do our work, our career, our jobs, and it's hard to parent the kids. So it's a chicken and egg thing. We are the, as I always mention this, the kids absorb so many of the things happening to the parents. A renowned psychologist said the kids are the family's emotional barometer, and I believe that. I support that notion. So we have, in order for us to tune into our kids, we have to tune into how we are at the moment also.
Thanks, Doc Michelle. Kat and Joy, how are you? What's your self-care routine like, or your coping mechanism, your self-care or self-love routine at home? How is it like in connection to what Doc Michelle mentioned?
Can I just add something really quick, Tanya?
Yes.
I think that one of the things that we've found too, is that we need to create really kind of predictable rhythms for our family, even during the quarantine. The quarantine sort of forces everyone to be at home, but that doesn't necessarily mean that parents are establishing predictable routines for their family that help to create a sense of security and positive expectation in our children. So we still have date nights with our kids, although it's no longer going out with them, but they can still expect that on Thursday night. We have certain things that we do on specific nights that they can anticipate, so that if during the day Edric and I get busy at certain points, our children understand that there's a time and place where we do get together, we have meals together, we have date nights with them, or we have family time over the weekend. So we really try to safeguard those rhythms. And Edric and I also, we have date night every Monday night. So these predictable patterns give our children a sense of security. And we also exercise every morning with them, almost every morning. It's Monday, Tuesday, and then we have a break on Wednesday, then Thursday, Friday, and then Saturdays we go biking. So I think this also helps with making them feel like there's still a sense of normalcy, even though, yes, we are dealing with the pandemic and the quarantine has, restricted certain things or made certain things difficult. I just wanted to add that part.
What about you, Kat?
Yes. I'd also want to share one of the things that were helpful during the period. In the beginning of the quarantine and the pandemic, I used to work in a common space, which was our living room. And it was distracting at the time because my child would approach me every now and then. So to reach an agreement with my husband, he told me that I have to find a space in the house actually, so that I wouldn't be disrupted and I wouldn't be guilty about the attention that I couldn't give my child at the moment. So I looked for a space and I really made a space for me to work where I have to really lock the doors down when it's work period, so that it would be also helpful for the child, because then there wouldn't be interruptions and there wouldn't be a sense of guilt with not being able to give attention when I'm at work. To also answer your other question of what are the self-care measures that I've put in place, well, to be honest, I've had this quarantine a bit easier than others, I think, because inherent or innate to me, I'm an introvert and I'm okay not being able to see friends or see a lot of people. I'm okay with being stuck at home actually, and I'm happy with that alone time. But it still comes with its own challenges, because now you have to be constantly collaborating at work, for instance. You feel that you are more accessible now. You have to be hyper connected in a sense that you resort to using Viber, you resort to using Messenger all the time, and you're everywhere at the same time. So one of the self-care things that I've done, the adjustments that I've done, is to always find the quiet time and really draw boundaries as to when I would be checking messages, and also put a limit to my time, because if I wouldn't put a limit, I'd be working way through the night to finish things. So it's really important to draw limits and set family time as well. And again, also taking care of plants would be another one of the coping adjustments or coping mechanisms that I've done during the pandemic.
Thanks, Kat. Doc Michelle?
Yeah, I just would like to really, really encourage moms to, while we are all at home and the way we do self-care before, maybe go to a spa, get a massage, it has to change. So, during this quarantine, there's a lot of insight that I gathered. So I come up with the 3S of self-care. While we are in the pandemic, it has to be simple, it has to be sustainable, and it has to be self-nourishing. Why did I come up with these three? We're always looking at self-care as a way for us to step out of the house. But right now, we cannot step out of the house. So we have to find those little pockets of time in the house in order to give ourselves time to breathe, time to do our exercise, our movement, of course, our quiet, our prayer time. And then that's a different time for our family. But we have to secure that, because the time for the self is actually recharging us. We have to revisit that self-care way that we did before that might not be longer working now. That's why I said that it has to be now sustainable, because we cannot say that, oh, I cannot do self-care because nobody would give me a massage anymore. I don't have my the mani-pedi that I used to have. There's none. We cannot, be fixated on how we do it before. And then I heard a lot of moms, they say they binge on Netflix or in K-drama. Well, this is good. We have to realize that it should not compromise sleep, because that's not self-care. That's binge. And self-care has to be nourishing the mind, the body, and the spirit. So if it's going to affect one area of our lives, for example, staying up late, it's going to affect sleep and our rhythm and pattern, then it's not self-care. That's a different thing altogether. But I really encourage, I personally find my own self-care strategies, because doing a lot of work, being a mom, managing the home, it's just too much for us. So the way we can safeguard our own sanity, our mind, our body, and our total well-being is actually through a solid, holistic self-care strategy. And I hope that you consider that. It has to be simple, sustainable, and self-nourishing. There you go.
I love that, Doc Michelle. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And let's move on to the kids. No? How do you check up on your children's emotional and mental well-being? Is there a process, or how is it in your household?
Since I have 6 kids, I regularly have to spend individual time with each of my kids. So even though the parenting goals are the same, right? But the approach for each child has to be unique to their needs. So each of my children expresses themselves in very personal ways. So some of them, they need affection. Some of them, they need a lot of, positive encouragement. Some of them, they need time. So depending on which need, that's how I check up on them and make sure that they're emotionally okay. So my oldest son, sometimes I will ask him, because he's almost 18, so I have him practice drive around the village so that I can pick up, things that I order. And we'll have conversations. I'll ask him, how is he doing spiritually? Is there anything I can pray for? And those are times when he will open up to me, because it's just the two of us, and he'll let me know what's going on in his heart. So that kind of gives me a glimpse, right? But I have to isolate them, because if I do it just all together, I'm not going to be able to find out what's really going on because all my kids are loud when they're together, and they won't necessarily open up if they're all together. So it really has to be that we catch them one-on-one. And another thing that my husband and I do, of course, we take advantage of meal times, because during meal times, what I try to do is make it thematic. So each meal, aside from breakfast, will be like maybe Japanese or Korean or whatever it is. And they enjoy these meal times. So meal times are really meant for us to bond together. And during meal times, we will, once a month at least, we will ask our kids, how can we improve? Why don't you ask one another how you guys can improve and share that with one another? So we really try to practice open communication. And we found that when we allow our children to express even their failures, their issues, and they feel like it's a safe place, they're not going to be rejected, then the more that they open up, and the more they feel that confidence to really share what's going on in their hearts. So that's one of the things that we really try to have in our household. And I have to say we, because it's not just me, my husband also. We really try to have open communication with our children. And it really starts with us. Like when we ask them, how can I improve? And they share something, we can't be defensive. As Dr. Michelle said, we can't be reactive, right? We really have to respond and interact with them and acknowledge the areas where we've made mistakes. So these are some ways that we find out what's happening in their hearts, and because we don't want to just look at the behavior. The behavior is just it's surface level, right? Sometimes it definitely is the heart that dictates the behavior and the things that they say. So we always try to investigate what's happening inside. And the way for us to do that is by getting them one-on-one, and by using meal times and family times to make it like, fun times where we can be ourselves, we can interact, we can share what's on our hearts, and everyone's welcome to open up.
Thank you, Joy. I love the simplicity of meal times. A lot of parents, I think, forget that it's readily available time with their children, where they can openly talk with each other. And then I also really like you one-on-one, purposeful one-on-one conversations for high-quality interactions with each child. Kat, what about you for 2-year-old Dan?
Okay, so it's very different in contrast with Joy's experience. And for me, having a 2-year-old child, they're not yet at the stage where they can express emotions. He doesn't even have a word for his frustration, for joy. And unlike older kids, they have a vocabulary for that. For Dan, it's really behavior cues that I know their well-being, his well-being, really. And how I secure his well-being is pretty simple. I see to it that even if I am working the whole day, I find time afterwards to let him explore his surroundings. At the age of 2, I noticed that he is interested in exploring the environment. He wants to test his limits physically, run around. And that's one of the things that were affected by the pandemic also. So we would sometimes sneak outside and let him run in the street so that he can exercise his independence. And I take cues from his behavior if he's getting frustrated also. And I try to calm him down with the tone of my voice when I speak with him as well.
Thanks, Kat. Doc Michelle.
That knowing all these things, it's also a struggle whenever we're, in the middle of too much. But I would like to just, personally, I try my best to listen, because many times we have too much adult things in our heads that, we just snap, or we just fail to listen. We readily comment with our kids, but I really, really value listening. As Mama Joy mentioned, meal times is very magical because it's a free time for everyone to just be together, especially now that my kids naman are in distance learning. So my husband and I both work from home. So that meal time becomes our tune up or check up time with each other. So do not undervalue mealtime because that means togetherness. So I really encourage parents, do not scold kids during mealtime. If you need to, reprimand them, do it in a more personal level, but never during meal times because it's supposed to create the family time together. But as an expert, let me just share with you two insights regarding parents. What I call this, it's a result of my doctoral dissertation. I call this parental availability. While we are available in the house now, we are not necessarily, remember what yung sinasabi ng teachers natin when we were young, we are physically present, but we are mentally absent. And I think many parents would be guilty of that. So remember, being available for our kids entails two things. And if we are available in these two parts, and then we can tune in and be proactive, as they say, proactive, to guarantee that we know them well so that they will not run into many emotional or mental health issues. And what are these two areas of parental availability? One is the what I call administrative availability. We set the routines. These are the things that we do. We have this schedule which is set and it's wonderful. But let's not forget that we need to be one is administrative, one is effectively involved. So administratively involved and the other one is effectively involved. We need to learn to listen to them. Many times kids share with us something and it has emotions involved. So how can we ensure that they're emotionally healthy? We do not judge what they're feeling. So we have to tune in not only to what they're saying, but the things in between or the context of how they say it. Some kids would say, "Mom, I'm okay." But what is okay? Is there an underlying message to the okay? Because I think the favorite line of kids is that, how are you today? How's school? Kids would usually answer, "It's okay." But what is okay? So we're not, this is the best time for us parents to develop, I believe, the emotional vocabulary of our kids, and through effectively connecting with them, meaning through their emotions, being attuned and creating that bond that they feel that my mom will listen to me, my dad will tune into me despite that what I'm saying is okay, or if I tell him something that is not nice, they will still be listening and they will be accepting. And I believe that if we can maintain that at home, we can have that level of openness and good connections with our kids that is very critical at this time.
Thanks, Doc Michelle. And in a practical note, what activities do you practice at home to help enforce positive behavior and harmony among each other at home? Do you let your kids do chores or help out with the chores? Ayan. So what are your techniques?
So for the chores that my child can do, well, it's really difficult to answer because he's just 2 years old. One of the things that I recently taught him is how to pack up his toys. It's terrible because he has a box of Legos and he really threw it around. And at this time, for me to teach him how to pack up his toys is to show him how it's done. So that's the simple chore that he can do, pick up his toys, or sometimes we can ask him to throw clutter in the trash can. But that's the extent of what he can do at this moment.
Yeah. Thanks, Kat. Mommy Joy.
Yeah, I really believe that children should participate and contribute in the home, because we don't want to raise them with a sense of entitlement that everything's going to be done for them. And I think it's healthier for them, even emotionally, to really be serving each other, serving also in the home. So chores are part of our homeschooling. The kids have to clean up their bedrooms, they have to clean up their toilets. We all help clean up the second floor and even the homeschool room. And like Mommy Kat was saying, also teaching our kids to pick up after themselves and not letting them think that it's the responsibility of others to do that for them. So if they make a mess, they're responsible for it. And in the kitchen, making sure that everything's cleared off the kitchen table. Although we do have household help. I've also talked to our household help, and I'm in agreement with them that I don't want them to be serving our children like they are little princess and princessas in the house. So I tell them that, make sure that our kids pick up after themselves, and they can also teach them how to do certain things in the home, because I don't want them to be entitled, and I think it's good for them, as I said. And one of my sons, Eden, he's really into plants, so that's part of his chores. He has to take care of the plants in the house. And our kids also, once a week with my husband, we do gardening together, where they have to learn how to weed, how to cut grass, how to take care of the garden. And the girls, sometimes they also help me do cooking stuff or baking. So I just find that during this quarantine, it's such an opportune time to teach our children life skills that will be very beneficial to them even later on as they grow up. So it's a great time to get kids to really contribute in the home.
Thanks, Joy. And Doc Michelle?
Yeah, I agree with those, because teaching kids life skills, especially now we're all at home. Mommy Joy is correct. Very good practices. That's the role of good parents, because we want our kids to grow up. I agree with that term. Many kids now are becoming entitled. So the only way we can ensure that our kids are grounded, they know that not everything in life will be given and handed to them, is really to arm them for the world. As an old quote say, prepare the child for the world, not the world for the child. Because even for myself, I ask my kids to take turns in washing the dishes. They need to fix their room. They have to clean up their own toilet. Since I have two, I have a boy and a girl. And even for my daughter who's younger, she needs to be the one to set up for her online school. She needs to be responsible for all her gadgets and stuff. But we need to teach them also consequences for unmet agreements. So if in case she doesn't wake up too early, there's a consequence for that. We will not wake her up in time for school, because she needs to learn the responsibility of, I need to take note of my time, and she needs to take her breakfast and then before she can go to school. So she needs to abide by that. Why do we need to do that? We cannot, it's nice if we can do everything, but if we do everything, then how will the child feel that they need to do it if mommy and daddy can do it, right? So if they get, life gets harder for them, the more that we are putting them at risk of mental health concerns, because they had it too easy. So this is ensuring that they know how to, I love the word that the kids use, and I use it for parents. Parents, we have to make our kids cringe. Because when they cringe, they know that life is hard. They need to take part in the house. They need to contribute to the household, not in monetary ways, but in ways that will serve each other. And that sometimes we don't give everything simply because we can afford it, but we don't give everything because they need to work hard for it. So these are life skill techniques that I believe that this pandemic is a blessing, because we can ensure that our kids get these things even if we are all staying home.
Thanks.
Can I add to that? I love
Yes.
that.
Go, Joy.
I read this book about how, as women, we can overfunction for the people in our life. And that really incapacitates everyone else, right? Because if they feel like, as Dr. Michelle was saying, if they feel like mommy's going to do everything for them, then they're going to do nothing. And so, this is something that we have to learn to do, that we cannot also think that we are in charge of our children's entertainment, that we always have to provide them with entertainment. It's very healthy for children to be bored and have to figure out what to do, to be creative, to push themselves, to think creatively. And if there's no room for boredom, and if they're just always relying on gadgets, on easy forms of entertainment, then they also don't exercise that part of their brain, and it's not good for them. So I tell moms, don't feel like during this quarantine, I am responsible to make sure my child is always entertained, always preoccupied. It's our job as parents to take care of them, of course, to make sure that they're eating well, they're getting good rest, but we're not supposed to overfunction for them. We're not supposed to be the ones that, provide their entertainment. Let them think of ways to play with one another, to build, to create, to struggle through the process of what am I going to do today because I'm done with all my work, and what else can I do? So I found that when we actually take away too much gadget time and make sure that our children have time just to have to engage others and be bored and figure out what to do, that they end up being very creative. And another life skill we need to teach our kids is business acumen. During the quarantine, they can come up with business ideas, and then they can now integrate the things that they're learning in language arts, in math, even in science, depending on what business they do. Communication skills, these are all important skills that they can utilize during the quarantine. They can do a buy and sell thing, they can come up with a product. And I tell my kids, you know what, if you fail in business now, you can still have a comfortable bed to sleep on, you still have food on the table. So practice doing different business ideas now. And if it fails, that's okay. That's part of the learning experience. But someday when you're in your 20s and you're trying to support a family and you do a business and it fails, the stakes are a lot higher. So getting our kids, to be exposed to financial literacy skills, business skills is so important. And we can utilize this quarantine time to think through those things with them.
This is for all of you. What considerations do you have for your child's safety? Like in terms of the products that you use or the space that you provide for them? Is there any consideration, or what safety measures do you have for them to explore at home?
Well, it's very simple. Anytime that my husband or I would go out, we make sure that we take a bath before we go home. For our child, we make sure that the space is baby-proof, that he doesn't stay or he doesn't climb in high spaces, because sometimes we leave him alone to explore the space by himself. And of course, I'm a human nature employee, so the products that I always use on my child would all be human nature products. And to be honest, I'm not also as paranoid as many that I've seen also to respond in the situation. It's not hyper sanitizing the space. I'm not like that. I make sure that there's still a good amount of bacteria that he could live with, because that's the real world anyway. But what we want to avoid right now is prolonged exposure to a virus-infested area. So we don't go to the malls, we don't go to the park, we don't have dine-out experiences. As much as possible, I keep him healthy so that I could spare the family from a visit to the hospital as well. That's something that we want to avoid at this moment. But beyond that, nothing else, just the usual bath times, just the usual washing of hands. I think that's the most effective way to keep the family safe.
Thanks, Kat.
I'll follow. I agree with I like the term of Kat, that not sanitizing everything, because it will drive me nuts also. But one thing, of course, I make sure I've been a human nature advocate since day one, and I've been a user head to foot. But what I would like to I encourage my kids, and of course us, our personal hygiene is critical, because of course that's the mark of health. So there's the oral hygiene. It's hard to go to the dentist now, and of course their physical hygiene. My kids are in puberty, and the other one is a teenager. Their hormones and everything is changing. So it's a must for me that they keep themselves clean. And also, I don't want my kids getting into having any their skin concerns. So I just make sure that everything would be safe for them, on top of the sanitation that we do at home. But I also make sure that they eat their vegetables, they take their supplements, because it's not only outside, but of course the inside is very critical. So sometimes they complain that why do we need to have fish again? So because we had meat yesterday, a little meat. And of course you have to load up with all the vegetables that we have on the table. And then they would complain, why do we need to have brown rice? Can we have white rice? We had white rice the other day. Today it's the brown rice day. So they need to observe the health protocols that we've been practicing at home, even though that we're here every day, because it's part of the holistic health that we believe in, that sanitation is key, but of course personal hygiene and physical health is also crucial for us.
Thanks, Doc Michelle. Joy, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what everyone is saying, and I also am a firm believer that, you know, prevention is the key, and we need to really. For me, I'm very careful about products because I myself was very much affected by endometriosis, and my doctor told me it's because of certain products that I was exposed to probably growing up that disrupted my estrogen balance, my hormones. So when it comes to my girls, for example, even when it comes to their shampoo, when it comes to things that they're exposed to on a daily basis, that's why I think as organic as possible is important, because my doctor also told me that you know, if you can afford to sometimes, and you know, with human nature, the products are affordable. So it's not like an organic lifestyle is far-fetched, but with products that they're exposed on a daily basis, we want to make sure that they're as natural and as organic as possible. And I also agree with Dr. Michelle that, you know, it's also what they eat, their habits. Are they getting enough rest at night? You know, our household, we wake up at 6:30 to exercise. I wake up earlier because I have to feed my baby and have my quiet time. But this rhythm of getting up early, making sure that our bodies have predictable rhythms, going to bed by 9:30, and then eating food that's healthy, making sure they have good vegetables and fruit and things like yogurt for their tummies, probiotics. So all of these things are our way as parents to, you know, protect them and keep them safe, because it's not just about avoiding things, but really building up the body. You know, COVID-19 is not the only virus that's out there. I don't even know if I'm allowed to mention that virus, but there are many viruses that are, and bacteria that our kids are exposed to on a day-to-day basis. And unless their immunity is very good, they will catch something. So yeah, we need to make sure that they're healthy, not just by preventing certain things or making sure that the home is a safe environment, but making sure that holistically they're okay. And even, you know, spiritually, we need to make sure that they have good truth anchors, so that as they navigate the difficult things that the pandemic may bring, and even future things that they may encounter, they are anchored in truth. They know what it means to have faith in God and not to, you know, be fearful about the future. They know how to process difficult circumstances positively. And then relational health is so important. If the relationships are good in the home, then there's not as much physical stress on the body as well. So those things are all important to look at, making sure our relationships are good, making sure spiritually our kids are doing okay in that respect, and of course physically, and getting outdoors and having sunlight, because kids are inside so much these days. Sunlight is so important, even for mental health. And you know, I'm not a psychologist, you can verify this with Dr. Michelle, but sunlight is so important for all of us. And we need a good amount of, I'm not saying expose yourself, just wear, you know, use the human nature sunblock. but we can't be, you know, exposed to the sunlight at the bad times of the day, but walking around together as a family, going biking once in a while, these things are good for them, because sunlight is also necessary to keep our bodies healthy. Would you agree, Dr. Michelle?
Yes, I agree. Super. That's sunlight, and for me, that holistic health. I would add to that. You know, that faith life is very critical now. No matter what religion you practice, but anchoring. I like your word, anchoring on your truth, anchoring on your God. But it's good to do it with family, because you know the spiritual practices is one of the key areas of what experts have called post-traumatic growth. We are not in a trauma, but the lives that we had these past months, it's not our normal, right? So we have to have, I think, a spiritual refreshment. You anchor on your truth, you anchor on your word, you anchor on a community that whom you can grow with. So that you bring it down to the level of family life. If the faith is clear, as Mama Joy said, that the relationship will be better. Because if those two are covered, it's easy to take care of the emotional well-being of each one. And it's easy to take care of the obvious, which is the physical health. So if we naman take care of the physical health, and then tune into the emotional health so that we can take care of each other and that the spiritual faith will come together. So it's really a complex yet complementary, holistic way of living. So I just want to give funny story that my kids are horsing around during one night after prayer time. And then my husband told them, guys, stay put. It's hard to go to the ER if one of you gets hurt. Because, they need to have that energy spent. And I believe that I have to encourage them to go out also for their self-care. So maglinis na lang tayo after, just stepped out of the house, just in the street, go and bike. Yesterday they told me, Mom, we played a good amount of badminton in the calle. I don't mind. We can clean them up after. Because both of them, they're 11 and 14, the body is changing. The hormones are changing also. I need to note myself, Mom, look, I have a pimple. My daughter is saying, Mom, I have a different smell. So that's why I really encourage them, guys, even though your classmates cannot smell you online or your teacher can see it, you have to protect yourself because you're protecting everybody in the family if you clean up. And also, that's encouraging them to have regard for their bodies and respect for themselves as they grow older.
So beautifully said, ladies. Thank you so much for these insights. And now that we know more about keeping our safety and sanity and how to connect with our children and family better, it is equally important that we take into mind their safety too. While being in the four corners of the home, another form of protection comes from everyday personal and home care products that we use. Choosing essentials are easy. Supermarkets and groceries are overflowing with bath and household products addressing all cleaning problems we can think of. But we often forget the question, are these safe for my family? Everyday products that we use at home should not only fight against disease-causing germs. These should also be safe and free from harmful chemicals linked to serious health risks, like what Joy mentioned earlier. Human nature creates effective, safe, and ready-to-use personal and home care and cosmetic products, genuinely natural formulations made of at least 95% natural ingredients, no harmful chemicals linked to serious health risks, and could pollute aquatic life. And all these are free from lab animal testing, meaning all products are certified cruelty-free. So to wrap it up, I just want to ask one final question to our guests this afternoon. Ano yung isang key takeaway nyo or that you've learned through this whole adjustment period with your loved ones?
Speaking on what has personally been helpful for me is really to adjust everything and to accept this new reality in life. It's not always expecting that it would go back to normal, but rather setting new standards in place for how life should be when it happened. And I've honestly, I don't want to use lowered my expectations, but I've adjusted my expectations on what is realistic being on lockdown. Truth be told, I used to go out every weekend and I would enjoy really going to the mall and doing shopping. But this time around, I had to explore new coping mechanisms during this pandemic. And really, also for the parents like me, I think that what is important is to be gentle to yourself and to adjust your expectations at home. We cannot have that spick and span house. We could not have dinner always on time. Sometimes we want something healthy on the table. Sometimes we always want our kids to be healthy, but sometimes I just order from the fast food and just serve my child that just to preserve the sanity. So it's really being gentle with ourselves and redefining our expectations for life and acknowledging that it is a season of sacrifice. At the moment, it's a season of sacrifice. And because it's a season of sacrifice, we have to buckle up and accept its realities.
Thanks, Kat. Joy?
One of the things that I had to learn myself was really to have an attitude of gratitude, that even if things have been disrupted and things are not as ideal as we would like them to be, that there's always something to be thankful for, something to praise the Lord for. And what I really have appreciated about this quarantine is that as a household, we became very close, not just with my children, but even with our household help. And every lunchtime, with the exception of Sundays, because we have worship time on Sundays, we will sing together worship songs at lunch, and we have prayer time. And our household help, they pray the most beautiful prayers, and even their own attitude of thankfulness and gratitude, even if they're separated from their families, and just their perspective on how they're handling everything, it just makes me really appreciate the fact that even if things are not exactly normal, that in this new normal, there's still things to enjoy, still things to be thankful to the Lord for. And you can always praise him every day. And that helps recalibrate everyone in our household when we come together to sing to the Lord and to pray. Then our mindset is, it's a more positive mindset, and it brings us together. So I've really appreciated getting to know our household help and just seeing that, if it's important for us, my husband and I, and our children to grow in our faith, it's also important for them, our household help. They're also part of our family. And so we're doing this together as a household. It's not just about our family. And the second thing would be that besides many things to be thankful for and having that attitude of gratitude, there's many ways we can still be a blessing during this time. I really try to use social media as a space to communicate positive messages, to reach out to people. My husband and I, we give talks online. We give seminars on parenting, on homeschooling, on faith, even on marriage. And I used to feel like, how can we ever, go back to speaking in front of people and how we used to do ministry in that way? But there's still ways to be a blessing. And when you are able to focus on that, instead of just focusing on yourself, I've found that it's been very healing even for me, because I've had my ups and downs with my health due to surgery last year. And trying to look outside of myself, even outside of our family, and outside of just, making sure our family is okay, but still saying, Lord, how can I be a blessing out there and use whatever platforms you've given me to reach out to people and to minister to people, has also been healthy for me, and also helped to keep, as you said, Tanya, the sanity during this quarantine. I think it's not just about just staying sane, but we can really actually enjoy this time and make the most of it if we're grateful and have the right attitude and choose to look outside of ourselves to see in what ways we or our family can be a blessing.
Thank you, Joy. What about you, Doc Michelle?
Okay, these are my personal takes for this quarantine. I believe that we are pandemic proof. We just are looking for, these are just different. But if you look at life, there's too many circumstances in our lives that prepared us for this. And this pandemic, I regard it as a teacher, and it's a filter. It's filtering us as people, is filtering us as a family for it to make us see what really, really matters. So I like that. So maybe it's God's way of polishing us, making us a better person than how we were then. So that's one, that pandemic is a teacher. The second one is that I realized that we have the inner resources to cope, and I would like, I went through also my own anxieties at the start of pandemic, but I realized that, hey, since I give trainings also in other parts of the country and elsewhere, a lot of my talks have been canceled, a lot of work has been canceled, but it doesn't mean that the mission has been canceled also. So when I recognize that it just needs to evolve, we just need to see how the Lord is taking us to a different way of doing things. It's beautiful. And because of that, I realized that while the purpose may have changed platform, the purpose remains. So that's why I am keeping on my work. My work is still I do talks, I do trainings, maybe like Joy, but I also do my own online session, my free online sessions every twice a week on my own page and in Spotify and YouTube. So there's a lot of things that we can do to share what we have and what we know to others. And more importantly, I realized that more than anything else, the well-being, the total well-being of my family matters. It's just not about safety. It's not just about sanity, but it's also everybody growing in faith in our spiritual life, growing not in terms of size, but growing in our emotional connection in our relationship. And I love the pandemic on how we are getting to know our kids all over again. I believe that's the blessing behind the burden. There you go.
Thanks, Doc Michelle. These are also inspiring and valuable answers na nakakalawak talaga ng pag-iisip, no? And nakakatulong sa pinagdadaanan natin lahat ngayon. Today, we discovered more about safety and sanity. Can our families have both in the new normal? So I just want to point out what I've learned. There are many things I've learned from our speakers today, but I was able to capture some of our key points. That the common problems na nararanasan natin with our children are actually already existent, as Doc Michelle mentioned earlier, and that parents just need to have more self-awareness and be responsive than reactive. And then we also, what Joy mentioned also about rhythms, and what Kat mentioned about space, na it's important to safeguard these predictable rhythms in our space so that we can go about our day smoothly. And the 3 S's of self-care was also one of the highlights that I picked up today. That self-care, especially for the parents, they need to be simple, sustainable, and self-nourishing. Ayan. And that listening is very important and that there's magic in mealtime. And dito natin magagawa yun, yung meaningful conversations and interactions with our children. And I love what Doc Michelle pointed out about being mentally available apart from being physically available. And that it's also important to give our children responsibilities, to reinforce positive behavior. So make our kids cringe, no? I even underlined cringe. So this basically means make them realize that life is hard, and this would protect them from mental health illnesses as they grow older, because they'd be stronger in terms of life skills, of having life skills that would prepare them for the real world. Ayan. So, thank you again. A big thanks again to all our lovely guests, Dr. Michelle, Mommy Joy, and Mommy Kat. Thank you also to all those who tuned in and finished the webinar despite your busy work from home and mom in action schedule. We appreciate your time to be with us today, and we hope you learned something new and enjoyed today's talk. You may comment down below your insights, or if you have questions about the webinar, you may message us directly here on our Facebook page. And for those interested, today is a good day to become a human nature advocate. Sign up as a dealer to get up to 25% discount. That's big. Or become a member to get 15% off our genuinely natural products. Visit www.humanheartnature.com to know more about our exciting offer. Once again, this is Teacher Tanya Gutierrez, Human Nature Child Care Center partner, and thank you for coming to our webinar. Until the next!